Oops. So today we're going to be talking about 5 steps to ignite your non-speaking child's communication, even if you've been told they're not ready or able. And I'm Michelle Younghusband. I am a registered social worker from Australia and I'm living in Denmark. I've been working with children with communication challenges for, I think, 27 years now, somewhere around that. And I really, really love it. I'm super passionate about it. So I'm really excited that you're here today. And let's get into it. Okay. So I've created a method of play that's called communication-based play that is a little different than many methods because I really believe that the kids that are struggling to communicate need a different approach than is often used. And I find it speeds up the rate of them learning to communicate. So it isn't actually a technique that you do to your child. It's a way of interacting with your child that respects their autonomy, their neurodivergence, their interests, their likes, dislikes, strengths, and challenges. I don't want to fit our kids into a box. I want us to actually meet them where they are and change the way we do things to make it easier for them to communicate. So what is really important about that for me is that it's non-coercive. And it's non-judgmental. We don't have a right way to play. We play the way our children enjoy. If it's not hurting them and it's not damaging anything, then there's no true way to play, because play is just learning through enjoyment and exploring and being curious. And however our children choose to do that, it's great if we can go with them. And that's the other core element of communication-based play, is that it's child-led. We follow the child, and as the child gets better at building those bridges, as well as us building the communication bridges, then we start doing some co-creation where we build games and interactions together. And in the beginning, we sort of do the work for the communication to make it easier for them. And what communication-based play really does is it builds a bridge between two worlds. And it's this actually teaching the core reason to communicate is about connection. So when we really teach our kids to do that and we demonstrate it, it's much easier for them to actually start to use communication. So the 5 foundations of communication-based play is body language, yes and, more fun with you, novelty, and a positive relationship. So we're going to start talking about body language. I'm going to talk a little bit about it, and then we're going to look at some videos so I can show you a little bit more. So the first foundational level of communication-based play is actually that we truly understand our child's body language. So much of our communication is through body language. And the more we can understand our child's body language and actually make our body language more explicit and easy to read, the quicker it is that they learn to communicate and connect. So the number one with body language is we need to show that we actually understand what our child's goal is, or their desires or their dislikes, and we help them reach those goals. Their body language tells us when to move forward or when to back off or continue or change the game. So the more in tune we are to their body language, the more likely the way that we approach our children is a way that actually they find soothing or comforting or exciting or interesting, or a way that they'd actually want to engage in. And also, if we really watch their body language, we can actually know exactly in that moment what they want to do, rather than just focusing on spoken language. What we want to do first, which is what all children do first, is actually focus on body language. And if we just miss this stage and we don't really make it explicit for our kids, they often still struggle even when they've got some language. So we want to build this first so they have a really strong foundation, so that when they start putting more words or get more fluent with their words, they're actually much better at reading body language anyway, and much better at demonstrating what they want through body language, and we're much better at reading their body language. What I find is most people are pretty good at reading macro body language, sort of big movements, pushing you away or pulling you towards them. Most of us can read our kids pretty well like that. What I find that we're generally not so good at in the beginning until we learn is those really micro ones, just the eyebrows going slightly down, or them looking away for a bit, or their shoulder going back rather than forward, or their face being quite neutral rather than interested. These are little things that show me, oh, maybe they don't like it, or maybe they do like it. Maybe they want me to stop. Maybe they're getting bored. This tells me exactly how I need to play to make it engaging and make it worth their while to do the hard task of actually communicating with me. So one of the most important things when this foundational stage is actually that you stop speaking in the beginning. So I normally do a week or two when you're going to do a communication-based play. Actually, you don't speak. You just use sounds, and maybe you'll sing a song, but you just spotlight the body language, spotlight their body language and spotlight your body language. So you bring it all down and make it really simple and give lots of space for our kids to process what actually we're communicating and what they're communicating. And it means that they can concentrate just on trying to get that core communication and connection before you start making it more complicated with language. This is the one that everyone seems to struggle with, is especially in this stage, and even in the next couple of stages, you don't ask questions, and you certainly don't ask questions you know the answer to. What is this? Where's the dog? Most of the kids that I work with, they know the answers to these questions. It creates often more stress. It creates a lot of verbal language, sound, noise. You've been doing it for a while probably, and it probably isn't really increasing their language in a functional way. So it's good to give it a break for a while and bring it back in a way that's really intentional. So in the beginning, if this is the stage you're at, I would say the number one thing you could take away from this video is reduce the amount you speak and be very conscious about how you're going to speak, and try and work on language that is connecting and not testing. Okay, so we're going to watch some videos, and when we're watching these videos, or when I'm working with a child and I'm playing with them, I'm always asking myself, from their body language, what can I tell is this child's intent? What's their goal? What are they wanting to do? What do they want to happen? What is this child's likes in this moment? What are they enjoying? What are they not enjoying? How are they feeling? So what is their energy level? Can I try and match it so my energy isn't too big for theirs or too low for the energy level they're at? What could I do next? Watching from what their body language just showed me, what would be my next decision on what I would do in response to what I've just seen with their body language? All right, so I'm just going to play the first video. So you can see these two kids are here. And one kid is quite animated and he's laughing. And the little girl, she's focused on the task. I can see big differences in their body language. Her face is not particularly animated. She's engaged. She's trying to get it right. I feel like these two kids have very different goals in this game. This child, who's laughing and falling back, is enjoying actually making the mistakes and finding that funny. This child is not connecting with him on that. So if I was playing with this child and we were playing this kind of game together, then this child's body language would tell me that if I did mistakes on purpose, or we both laughed at the mistakes and I let him get sillier with the mistakes, this would be a beautiful connection that we could make together, and we could make this really enjoyable and silly and fun, and we would be enjoying this little joke together, because this child knows that it's not the way to do it, and that's what's funny about it. For this child, I definitely wouldn't go and start being silly, because this child was actually trying to get it right. Her whole body language is more focused, and she's tense, and she hasn't got big body language. She's really focused, and she's actually trying to get it right. So her body language would maybe tell me, maybe I could actually we could go and we try and do it faster and more correct and more complicated, because maybe that's the part of the game that she actually enjoys. So if you look at their whole body posture tells you everything you need to know. Their little micro, the way that the intensity of their eye contact, just everything tells you about what you could do next that would actually keep your child engaged and connected with you, and that you're actually reading their communication helps them feel more connected to you. And the more connected your child feels to you, the more communication bridges you can build. Okay, so we'll just watch this one and we'll think about what is this child's intent. So he puts his hand out to help and she just puts her foot in. So he doesn't bother putting the little thing in the bottom of the shoe like he was going to. And he knows her intent. So he's reading her intent. Her intent is like, I just want to get moving. I want to get these shoes on and I want to go exploring. So just no language, just opening the shoe so it's easy for that child, because they want to get quick. They want to be quick. This whole child's focus was about getting somewhere quickly. I would imagine to explore the rocks or whatever that they're doing at this beach. This child's got a mission, and the father, I think, read the intent. All right, this one's a really interesting one. Oops, sorry. If we watch this little girl here, she's enjoying the visual aspect of all of those confetti coming down. This little boy is focused on the cake. He's focused. He looks quite calm. I want to play this one again because there's a lot happening, particularly for this little girl in the background. There's these two kids that start playing beside her over here, and they're playing a wild game, throwing the confetti up. And you watch her shoulder goes like this when the confetti comes down. That says to me, she doesn't like the confetti going up in the air and actually falling on her. She likes it contained. She likes to watch it go from up here into the little paper cone that she's got. She's really enjoying that. So anything that would enhance that kind of game is what she's interested in doing. If I was working with this kid with the cake, then it would be like the fun of cutting the cake or eating the cake together or giving cake out to people, whatever this child's intention is. If I was playing with the two girls behind, they're enjoying throwing it. They're enjoying making the mess. So that would be their intent, and they're kind of got a bigger energy. So I would go a bit more with that energy. So if I was this girl at the back here who's sitting down with the cone, to me, her energy is more slower, calmer. She wants it to be not so loud. I think she would like to be in a corner all by herself or somewhere quieter. She happens to be at the party, so she's just going into her own zone. Their body languages is telling me how I could play with them and how I could build a communication bridge purely by reading their body language. And you can do this with your kids. If you start reading their body language more, you're more likely to tune in to where they're at. So for this girl, she's animated, her mouth is open, her eye gaze is on the slime. This is what she's enjoying. And she's enjoying the way it wobbles. She's enjoying the sensation on her fingers. But did you see she tried? I don't think she would like the slime to stay too long on her fingers without being able to get it off. Because did you notice she sort of put it down, and I think she wants to make it flat again and bring it up again or do something like that. So if I wanted to join in her game, then I would have my own slime and I might do a similar thing, or just be next to her or give her more of that kind of slime. I would try and enhance what she was already interested in doing. But what's most interesting about this is just watching her body language. She's definitely interested in doing this. She's definitely engaged, and in continuing something like this would probably be interesting for her. And this tells me this is the kind of body language she has when she's feeling quite calm and engaged. And that will help me for next time to work out, is she engaged? Is she frustrated? Whatever it is. This one I find interesting. So on the surface, if you look at this quite quickly, it looks like a game where both of them are really enjoying that. But there's this moment where she does it on the belly and he really moves back. To me, that's saying, I and he keeps it back and keeps playing, but his whole body is back. And he's looking and he's smiling. So he enjoys this game, but he didn't enjoy the part actually so much. He actually found it a bit uncomfortable where she was having the dinosaur poke him all over his chest. That wasn't super comfortable for him, but he still wanted to keep engaging. So if that was happening when I was playing with the child, well, then I would stop doing that and look at it a way where we could keep playing, where I'm not actually attacking their body. So it's something a bit gentler or something a bit further away from their body so that they could come back and engage again and not feel so uncomfortable. Tickling's another one. I see lots of kids that I've worked with that laugh with tickling and actually hated it. I'm not saying that this child does, but there's a moment where she's really moving away and her eyes, and she's not looking, she's really like looking away. To me, this is like, I would do this for a little bit and then I'd probably stop and find a different game, because to me, the way the body's positioned, the way the head's positioned is like, this is enjoyable and uncomfortable at the same time. So I could do it for a little bit, but I don't think the child would want it for a long time by the body language. This is interesting. If you just look at the way that their faces are and the way they're moving their body. So they don't look particularly excited. They don't look bored or interested. They're kind of neutral. When she shook her hand, to me, that's saying that this ball is probably too heavy and uncomfortable to throw for her wrists. So they would probably find it more enjoyable if it was a softer ball, a different kind of ball, a balloon or something. And I might even offer that into the game, because that might make it more interesting and more unpredictable and less strain on the hand, which would actually make it more enjoyable. So I'm watching this one. And the child, it looks like the mother wants to do like a peekaboo, but to me, it looks like the child's way more interested in bouncing. Like that is way more interesting. And that's actually what this child would like to do. So if I could join the game and make it more about that, that would be entering more of their world rather than trying to get them to do my game. Okay, so the second concept in communication-based play is yes and. So after you've done the first stage of just following them and just being with them and just giving them what they need, you get to yes and. And this is where it's actually from improvisation. It's an improvisation skill. So it's someone bringing an idea into the play and you don't judge it. You don't decide if it's a valid idea or not, like, no, we can't have any aliens because aliens don't exist. You just go, well, if there's an alien at the supermarket, then I'm just going to go with it. So it's the same sort of thing. If your child starts to throw a ball up to the ceiling and you've been playing this back and forth throwing, and then they start throwing it up to the ceiling, when I'm doing my yes and, I'm not going to try and redirect them to throwing it back to me. I'm going to yes and. I'm going to go, yes, and let's throw all of the little tiny balls up in the air. Like, let's make it even more interesting and more exciting. Or I throw the ball to you by throwing it up that hits the ceiling and then goes to you. I'm going to go with what you're suggesting, and I'm going to add to it and make it more interesting. So this is in stage 2 of communication-based play, after you already got quite good at doing the no language, following their lead, following their body language. And this is where you can just move beyond copying and actually add something interesting to the game without expectations that the child has to do it. So just say your child does start to throw the ball up when you're throwing the ball to each other, and then you throw the ball up to the ceiling and the child just isn't interested, like they just turn away or something. I wouldn't continue to do that. Like, no, we have to play this game. I'm now set on this game. I would just look at what is the child going to do now. I would just follow the child and keep trying to add value to it. So if you've watched this family, I think the mum initially was sort of like, let's just throw it in the air. And then the littlest is like, no, let's throw it at the person with the camera. And then everyone else follows. The oldest child follows that child, and eventually the mum comes over and starts doing it more in that direction. So that's a yes and. It's not deciding, oh, we can't throw leaves. It's like, well, no one's really being hurt and it's funny and it's enjoyable. So this is an example. She brings over the hoop, and instead of deciding if it's not okay or not, the mum just goes, okay, and realizes the intent for the child is, I think the child wants to see her actually twirl it around. That's the bit would be interesting. So it's like, yes, you give me that, and I can twirl it and I can make it more interesting. And then you could do something else with the hoop that could actually be interesting. You could spin it on the ground or something. So yes, the hoop spins, and I can spin it in lots of different ways. I can spin it around my waist. I can spin it on my wrist. So it's that yes and, just making it more interesting. So this little boy is coming. He's just running. You could hug him, or you could yes and it and make it like a flying in the air, and then you could sing an aeroplane song. So like, yes, you're an aeroplane, and I'm going to do a song, or and I'm going to make the noises of the aeroplane, and I might fly you around and then take you somewhere. This one's interesting. Like, I'm looking at him. He's like, to me, his body language is saying, I'm just trying to entertain myself while I'm waiting. So then I would think, how could I join in this game and add to it? It could be that I have other balloons and I start bouncing them on me and then bouncing it on him on his different parts of his body or whatever, and see if he enjoys that. Is it the bouncing he kind of finds soothing? So I would yes and it. I would go with that bouncing on the face because that's what's already happening, and see if he wants it anywhere else or he wants to do it to me, because I'm going with his game. All right, the number 3 is more fun with you than alone. If we don't make it more fun with us, we're not really putting the effort we need to put in for them to put the effort that they need to put in to do communication. Because if your child is struggling with communication, there's a reason, and it means that it's hard for them. It's really difficult for them. So we want to make it as enjoyable as possible, and we want to make the effort that they're putting in worth it for them. So we're trying to help them achieve their end goals or what they're interested in. We reduce demands. So we're not directing them how to play. We're not asking them questions, and we're not giving them a lot of verbal information that they can't process quickly enough, and they don't have the communication means to actually respond quickly either. If we can just give them a lot of space to be able to process it, so the little things that we do say is actually spotlighted and easy for them to process, and it's repetitive, so they get to hear the same things over and over in a fun way that's actually motivated by what they're interested in, they're more likely to want to actually engage in this kind of play with you. And this play in the beginning can be like, you can set a time aside, like a 5-minute session or something, but you will find the more you get used to it, the more you can add fun and interest and make being with you more interesting, and doing this sort of approach to each other. It becomes just your everyday life. So in the beginning, it's like a play thing, but communication-based play is actually just about how you interact with each other so that communication increases. So if you look at this little boy, he's just offering. There's no demands here. This child is not expected to take it. And they just have this little nice moment where they both enjoyed, like one child enjoyed giving it and the other child enjoyed getting it. It was just a nice moment. So that was more fun than if the ball had been on the ground. Like, it was more interesting to get it from another kid than it would have been just if it was on the ground. This one's great because the parents are really looking at what are the kids interested. They're adding a song, they're moving the water so the boats go faster. So they're really helping the intention. The intention is, I think, is that the two kids are actually having a race with the boats, or maybe they want to see how far they can go. So it's more fun together because your boats go further and it's more interesting and exciting than possibly if they would do it alone. So this is what we want. We want that there's no pressure or expectations of communication. There's actually giving space for connection. And when we connect, we communicate. And I find when people do this approach, communication, whether it's an AAC, signing, or speech, comes so much more easily. Like it's not a lot of work, because it's not work. It's actually about connecting and playing. So in this one, you can see she wants to be on top and she wants to slide under her, and she is in the game. The mum is the game. She actually is the toy. And that makes it more fun than doing it alone, because it's not something actually those kids could do alone. Like it's either mum being the horse and the bridge, or they're trying to do it to themselves. It's not really exciting. So actually, if you can be the game, if you can be the one that's fun, that means you always have it with you. It's not a toy, it's actually you, and it's about your relationship and your connection. So the more fun things you can do, particularly a lot of physical stuff, I find could be really exciting for kids, or it actually feeds a lot of the sensory needs that our kids have. And it's fun. Most kids enjoy physical play. So that's a really good way to try and increase communication. This one's really cute. It's it's a little bit more of a setup situation, but this is what this girl's interested in. She wants to play shop. She wants to beat the food and give it back. And what the parents are adding to it is actually going with the role play. This role play would be less interesting by herself, because she wouldn't have customers that could speak back and give her money and take the goods. So them doing it with her makes this more fun than if she does it by herself. And this one's interesting. You can play with a balloon by yourself, but there's something more fun sometimes about doing it with someone else. So if you can see that they slightly changed the game, it's not exactly the same all the time. They're both changing the game slightly without taking over. Neither of them are expecting the other to play the game. If you watch it closely, this clip, you can actually see they changed the game a couple of times. And one time when one changed it, the other didn't, and changed it back to the game that they were playing, and the other one accepted that. So it's that kind of dynamic back and forth that keeps it interesting. But also the main point of this video is this is more fun together. This is funny. And the more you can add to it to make it funny and fun, the more interesting it's going to be. So maybe you put things inside the balloon that they couldn't do themselves. Maybe you can blow up the balloon that they couldn't blow up themselves. That makes it more interesting. That makes being with you more exciting. This one definitely makes it more exciting. So this dad is pretending to eat her food, and he's making it funnier than if she just sat there and ate a biscuit. Like she finds that much more hilarious with him trying to eat the biscuit and knowing that he's not actually going to, because she knows he's not actually going to. So it's a safe, scary moment. That's what we want for our kids. We want these funny, slightly on the edge of scary, because we all know, what if I lose my biscuit? But it's funny because you know you're not going to. And this makes this whole moment so much more fun when dad is there than when he wasn't, because she's in the mood for it now. She's enjoying it. It's a really fun experience. Okay, the next really important concept is novelty. We all love novelty. We like things to change. If we don't have things change for a long time, it can get very boring, or become something that we enjoyed can become undesirable if we have too much of it. What is also interesting about the human brain is, even though we love novelty, we also love predictability. So what I find the sweet spot, particularly for a lot of our kids with complex challenges, is that predictable unpredictability. So I kind of understand what will happen, but there's enough novelty in it to make it interesting. So yes, we're going to play with dad pushing us in the box, but maybe sometimes he pretends we're a car. Maybe sometimes he pretends we're a train. Maybe sometimes he pretends that we crash. Maybe sometimes he goes so slow and then he falls asleep because the engines run out, and you've got to feed him something to get him to going. So like what's predictable about that is I just sit in the box, or the predictable part might be that my dad doesn't start pushing until I look at him, or until I sign go, or till I do this motion with my hand, or I shake the box and then he goes. Like, there's some predictable part about it, so it doesn't feel too scary or too different. So this also applies to when we want to extend interest. So if we don't extend interest or add more to games or offer sort of other alternatives, we can take something they enjoy and kill it by being excited they like something and then overdoing it because, oh, they've enjoyed this the last 10 times we played this, I'm just going to keep doing the same thing. What we'll find is that then sometimes you actually kill the thing that they enjoy because you're overdoing it, or you haven't brought any unpredictability or novelty into it, and they don't really want to do it anymore at all. And then it sometimes can be hard, particularly if your kid doesn't have a lot of things that they're interested in. And also, you just offer it without pressure or expectations. It's just an offer. It's a possibility that they might be interested, and if they're not, they're not. And that's where really watching their body language tells you, even if they're not communicating it with an AAC, words or signing. So you take an example like balls. One way to extend balls is to have 1,000 different ball-like things. You can get these like really great sensory pearls, those water pearls. They're tiny, tiny, and you can put your hands through them. They're balls, basically. And then you like look at all the different kind of balls: footballs, basketballs, marbles, a big, really big exercise ball. You can play with all of these in so many different ways, but they're all essentially a ball-shaped object. And when kids are overgeneralizing in that first part of language, which is normal for all kids, they would call all of these balls, and that would be okay, because that's normal stage for kids when they're first learning language, is that they overgeneralize with a word that they've know, like calling all four-legged animals that are furry dogs, or all of them cats, even if it's a cow or it's a hamster, could all be dogs when they're overgeneralizing in that first stage of language. And then the way you play them, so even if you use a very similar sized ball, you could dance with it, you could balance it, like pass it from your feet to their feet, you can kick it around, you can physically bounce on it and sing songs, you can throw it up, you can float it in water, you can pretend that they're your eyes, you can actually use them in so many different ways. So sometimes even taking something that they enjoy and using in an unexpected way is that predictable unpredictability. It's predictable because it's a ball and I know it won't hurt me and I know I'll enjoy them. It's unpredictable because now that they're my ears and I can hear everything, or maybe they're my apple and I'm going to eat it. It makes it unpredictable and interesting. So when I'm watching this little boy, he's just lining up all his cars, he's organizing it. I'd probably watch him for a bit, and you do know your own kids. You kind of know, do they prefer that you don't get involved? Do they like it if you add to their collection? So it looks to me like he's just got this car, and that he might actually have run it into the other cars, or maybe he just likes to go around it. So if I'm trying to add to that interest and extend it, I might get cars that are a similar kind of car, but lots of different colors or different sizes, or maybe he likes all the same sizes, but like all the different types of cars. So I'd try and add to it. Maybe he would find it funny if we were just had all the cars lined up like that, and then we got a whole heap of cars and just drove it into it and they crashed, so everything crashed. Or maybe actually he'd prefer it if I gave him things so he could add to his collection and make it more visually interesting. It would depend on your child what they would find funny. Maybe they would like me to take the cars and roll it on his body. Maybe we could build tunnels. So like, it's taking the interest and just expanding it, but not taking it over. We're offering it. We're not saying this is how you have to play with it. It's just an offer. This is how you could play with it. All right, the last number 5 is the positive relationship. So ultimately with communication, positive relationship is the goal. We use communication yes, to get our needs met and to keep ourselves safe. But the majority of our communication, particularly if we're making comments, is actually just about connection. It's just saying to someone, yeah, look, I've had this experience, or I have this feeling. Oh, look what I can see. And I want to share it with you purely for that. And this is about actually creating opportunities to build communication bridges without accidentally creating demands and too much noise. So, like I said before, non-speaking kids really need space to build communication bridges. And we want them to choose to spend time with us and to want to try and do this new way of communicating. We want them to be interested, engaged, and excited about communicating. And if our goal is actually connection, then communication comes without pressuring our kids to communicate. So I will go and see a child and I am just offering them opportunities, and I'm just interested actually in connecting with that child and getting to know them. For many of the kids I've gone to see, like I'll be there half an hour or 15 minutes. And for many of those kids, they'll start speaking after 15, 30 minutes for the first time. But even kids that I've worked for longer that needed to do sign language first, or I do know kids that have lifelong use of an AAC device. It doesn't really matter for me how a child communicates. What I think is so key is that children do communicate, and they're communicating for connection and not just being taught to ask for objects. Because when we teach our kids just to ask for objects, they have nothing to connect with people except asking for things, and that really limits them. So even I've seen kids that had quite a lot of language, and I had to take them right back. And everyone in the whole family, they had to go right back to just doing the foundational, stop speaking, just focus on the body language, and then build it back up again. And when they did that again, their child had the ability to actually connect through language by actually making comments, talking about things, even if they didn't have a lot of language or the same amount of words that they had before. The way they could use them, I think, was true communication and true connection, and not just getting things. Because the way we connect is a lot more than asking, I want chips, even though that's a fantastic part of communication. It's a very small part in the bigger scheme of connection and how we get along with people and how we get our needs met. So it's just about joining. If you just look at this video, she's just offering a way of playing with these toys without dominating their play. She's just showing different things you could possibly do with the toy. This is just a really nice moment because those kids are right with her. They haven't taken those toys and moved away. They're not trying to just do it their own way. They're just quite curious. And if you look at the little one, he actually starts spinning the wheels because he thought, oh, that's interesting. You can do that. So that just was a little communication moment. And this expands until they're actually communicating in more diverse ways. So if you look at this, there's not a lot of language from the child, but there's a lot of communication and a lot of actually focus on each other and being there with each other. It's a really lovely moment.